Alright, we are back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, I'll be picking up on some of the developments for Week 17 overall. So, to get straight into it, the Raiders in this game made it even more obvious that they were going to tank it once I saw that they were taking out Jeremy Chinn and placing him on IR at around the exact same point that they did it with Brock Bowers and also Max Crosby. Like, how are you going to do that to one of the better defensive pieces that you have? A man who's literally been a tackle machine for them all season long. 114 tackles is definitely one of the top marks on their overall team. And, I mean, granted, a lot of those numbers are going to come from the fact that the defense is always on the fucking field because the offense is not sustainable enough to take that pressure off. But he's still been that great of a player for them in terms of contributions. And I'm sure that his presence out there would have made things at least a little bit different for the Raiders in that situation. And knowing that they decided, you know what, we don't have any use for you. We're just going to sit you down and shut you down for the rest of the year. It makes absolutely no sense. And again, like it was said in the recap, man, that's going to have to be looked into because there's just no way they can get away with something like that. Like, come on, bro. Goodness gracious, man. TJ Hockenson would be out of the game against the Lions on Christmas with a shoulder injury, and even if he was in that game, the offense, as it was just hammered into our mindsets throughout the entire game, the Vikings offense was going to be limited regardless. It took a 65-yard rushing touchdown at the end of the game for them to find some life. When they were forced to move the ball from their own side of the field, they could barely get first downs at all. They weren't really that effective all game long. And again, the only reason why they ended up winning was because the Lions continued to just hand them free turnovers like it was nothing. I don't know how much TJ Hockenson really would have changed up anything like that. You know, the offense was going to be what it was, and I mean, hell, the defense came to play and essentially dictate the control of the overall game for them. So they were fine regardless. George Karlaftis would be questionable with an illness. I do believe that Ashton Gillotte was taking on more reps throughout the course of the game against the Broncos on Christmas in his place. I did not see him on the field in that game. But I'm sure that, you know, if he didn't play in that one, he would more than likely be returning soon, or maybe the Chiefs would also be in a situation where, you know, if it's too debilitating, if it's too much of an influence in terms of how he can function at the moment, then they'll probably let him sit. I don't really know what the Chiefs could really accomplish at this point in a season that's already proven to be lost for them. So they may be content with that somewhat, but I don't know if they're worried about, and of course they're a winning organization. I'm not even about to insinuate that they're trying to tank for anything right now. But it's just like, they've already had such a long season to this point. May as well just get an early start to getting ahead, resting up, doing whatever you got to do to get prepared for the next season. That's really all it is. Jourdan Lewis would miss time with a foot surgery, and he's going to be out for the rest of the season for the Jaguars. Obviously, he was signed in the offseason as a slot corner for them, one of the highest paid, if not the highest paid slot corner in the NFL at that time. And, you know, through his own work on that side of the ball, along with the overall strides that they've continued to take over a year-to-year basis, the Jags are sitting in prime position to take control of the AFC South and the entire conference if they manage to get the 1 seed. Of course, they need some things to stack up in their favor, but man, you know, that signing was just one of those marquee ones in the offseason for them that have truly panned out. And compared to some of the other cornerbacks, you know, in this free agency class, I'd say that Jourdan Lewis is probably in the best spot. It's unfortunate that he can't, you know, continue his season with this injury, but he's definitely put in a whole hell of a lot of work and it's vaunted, this defense at times, to single-handedly be the reason in some cases why the Jags, even came out with wins in these situations. I mean, hell, you take it back, for example, to one of the earlier matches they had against the Texans with Josh Hines Allen literally putting it on his shoulders and forcing a damn sack fumble as the Texans are trying to drive into the end zone. Like, that kind of stuff, when you have a defense that can provide that kind of effort for you and come through more often than not, man, it makes you somewhat capable and somewhat formidable when we get into the postseason play. You know, the Jags are still just overall in a spot where I don't know if they're generally respected by everybody, but hey, you may not want to go up against them in the postseason, and especially if you have to face off against them at home in the event that the Super Bowl runs through Duval, right? You'd have to tread lightly, for damn sure. It's interesting to see, like, it's not exactly, I don't know, I haven't, seen a lot of Jaguars games live. They're not going to always have them on national television. I wouldn't say that it's exactly Saxonville for them, but you look at the way they've been playing. If you are a hardcore Jags fan, you kind of get 2016 vibes from this squad. And obviously, you have a much better supporting cast on the offensive side compared to Blake fucking Bortles and that entire chaos around a decade ago. So I don't know. It'd be something to look out for. The thing with a lot of these teams too as well is that they are going to, at least some teams who aren't necessarily in playoff clinching scenarios, whether or not they're already in, they're just going to sit some of their core players out. So that's a given. Like, some of these teams already have their seeding secured, and they're just not trying to get any of their key players hurt for the postseason. So that's customary practice. I can't be surprised at that. Chris Olave would be questionable with a back injury for the game against the Titans. And again, he proceeded to go the fuck off. So you love to see that. Dee Eskridge would be doubtful to return in the game against the Bucs, as he had suffered a toe injury during the course of the game. And I don't believe that he's set to return next week, but we'll see. Noah Fant was questionable with an ankle injury for the game against the Cardinals, and overall, he wasn't even really a player that needed to get going in order for the Bengals to win this game, if it makes sense. Like, the Cards, again, have been just a laughingstock all season long. You can pencil in a 20-point deficit in your favor playing against them all the time. And that offense was rolling regardless of whether or not Noah Fant was in the lineup. CJ Gardner-Johnson would be questionable with a knee injury for the game against the 49ers and would play. He had, once again, a few good plays that show you, hey, this is definitely a player who's one of the more reliable safeties in the league at times. And then you have situations like him literally forcing an interception but being called for a defensive penalty. And that promptly led to another 49ers score in that game. It's just, like, he's got to figure that out. He's got to figure that out. I just, man, it's craziness every single time. Calvin Austin III would be out with a hamstring injury. I think I already mentioned that. Alvin Kamara would be out of the game against the Titans with a knee/ankle injury, it was mentioned. And, of course, in his place, they had Aldrick Estime step in. Really didn't play all that bad. The former Bronco himself led the team in rushing yards and got himself a touchdown on the day to lead or at least contribute in a way, to New Orleans beating the Titans in the battle of absolute bad. Jourdan Love would be in concussion protocol, as I mentioned, and he would also be out of the game against the Ravens. I would expect him to probably sit out the next week as well, because it's like, you are the Packers in the situation. You don't want to stumble into the playoffs with back-to-back losses. Back-to-back-to-back losses in that case, right? You don't want to do that to yourself. But at the same time, is it so worth having Jourdan Love go out there and play against the... Yeah, I think they face off against the Vikings in this. Let me check their schedule real quick. But seriously, it might not be worth Jourdan Love going out there, playing against said team, and then proceeding to re-aggravate an existing injury, or, potentially develop a new one that could hinder his ability for the playoffs. Yeah, they face off against the Vikings defense. Do you really think after they did what they just did to Jared Goff that they're going to cool down and settle? No, they are coming at you full throttle, and they're going to fuck Jourdan Love up in that situation. Knowing that he already isn't 100% at the moment, you'd literally have him out there like a sitting duck. And that's the last thing you want to do to one of your more valuable assets on the team, especially when you're about to enter the dance. You're already in. That's the most important thing. Yes, their seeding, they are not really going to be able, in this case, to really escape, being, those in those three slots on the bubble. They'll probably be the 7th slot at this point. There's nothing you can do about that. So it's like, at that rate, if you can't realistically move at all, there's just no reason to even bother putting in one of your most important players, who's already dealing with a concussion at this moment, currently in concussion protocol. Why would you risk having him go back out there and make it even worse? Knowing that with you having to play either of... depending on how things go, the Packers, it's not set yet, but they would either be playing the Bears or the Eagles in the first round, thinking about it from a 7-2 matchup perspective. I would just much rather have you prepare for that, because no matter what, you are going to be the 7th seed. All of the other 6 teams in the playoffs at this point, or at least 5, again, NFC South isn't set, and they need a division winner for that. But the playoff picture, for the most part, is so stacked to where that record, one that would typically make you one of the top teams in a conference in the older playoff format, now you are barely scraping to get by, as you have other strong teams, at least 11 wins or higher, already in the picture, already trumping your record to this point. There's no way for you to escape that. Just rest your players, get them as prepared as they possibly can be, with an extra week to just take it easy, get in the proper film consumption, and start to learn the playbook for the given matchup. Hell, learn them both. You don't know who you're going to face, but learn them both. Just sit back and prepare. Do not try to self-sabotage yourself inadvertently by forcing an already injured player to go out there and suit up for a game that's essentially meaningless at this point. Let's just be honest. No matter if you win or you lose, you've already secured a playoff berth, because this same damn team eliminated the fucking uh, Lions. And even in a loss, even if people might be thinking, okay, if the Vikings win this game, they would have a chance at potentially getting in the playoffs. No, I believe that they're also eliminated. And even in that situation, even if they were somehow still in the hunt, the Vikings, that tie is a major bonus. A major fucking bonus for them right now. Absolutely major bonus for the fucking Packers. So no matter what happens, they're set. You just have to legitimately take a break. That's it. I implore you at that point. It's just don't work smarter, bro. Work smarter, not harder in this situation. Seriously. Okay. The Seahawks would be missing Charles Cross and Coby Bryant with their respective injuries in the game against the Panthers. But overall, it ended up being okay. The defense did what they had to do, and even with Charles Cross being a great blindside blocker for this team, one of the better left tackles in the league, I mean, as a whole, again, they've been stepping up the rushing attack regardless of his absence. You know, he's been out for a few games now, and they've been able to establish some great work there. It gets you excited in a way to see that they are doing that much damage on the ground to that kind of efficiency as well when they've been struggling with it earlier in the season. And this is all happening, you know, yes, you love to see Gray Zabel getting the job done on the interior all over the line. You love to see Abraham Lucas getting the job done as well, and Anthony Bradford, you know, despite all the memes about him, actually playing relatively well. This is all happening without a guy seen to be as their best asset on the offensive line. That's pretty fucking solid. Nakobe Dean, as I did kind of say, would be out with a hamstring injury in this game. They would very much hope to get him back before the start of the playoffs. So he may rest again. And they said as well, you know, I was, you know, looking through recently, they said that they were going to sit several Eagles starters out against the Commanders. You know, they already beat them the first time. So they have no incentive to really force it, honestly. Again, same thing. A team that had literally struggled just the week before to come away with what could be seen as a strong victory against the Bills. It's like that could, in theory, take a lot out of you. And to try to slug it out in full for yet another game before you even get into the playoffs, it's just not necessarily smart, especially against a Commanders team that ain't playing for much at this point either. I mean, you're literally throwing Josh Johnson out there and expecting him to go out there and win the ball game. Regardless of what the Eagles do, their chances of coming out on top there are fairly high. If anything, they are in a spot where, you know, they and the Bears are 11-5, both of them. So, you know, seeding between 2 and 3 is going to come into play here. I don't know if the Eagles are really that concerned with it right now. I mean, you know, seeding isn't fully set in stone overall. So while that would have to get sorted out, I mean, again, same kind of vibe here. They're still in the playoffs no matter what. So it's like, come on now. But I will say that, you know, if they were really that worried about it, I would think that the Eagles would be fine playing either one of the Rams or the Packers, to be honest with you, because if they're the 3 seed, as they are now, they would be facing off against them. And if they were the 7, or if they were the 2 seed, they'd be facing off against the Packers, as I already explained. Yes, the Rams had their number for a while in the matchup that they had in September, up until you had the Eagles pull off that fucking comeback down 26-7. And ultimately get a game-sealing blocked field goal attempt to win the game on Jordan Davis's front, to, again, be one of the highlights of what has truly been a good season for him. As much as we want to make it about Jalen Carter, both of those guys are excellent fucking D tackles. So yeah, they're definitely thinking about that in the back of their minds, but it's not enough for them to say, we're going to go all of our way to make sure that we win this game and put our players at risk. No, it's never worth that. The Jets would place Will McDonald IV on IR. And honestly, we know exactly what the Jets are at this point. I think that, it's a lottery system in a way. They are probably going to end up with the number one pick regardless. It's just, we can say they are tanking. We could throw that out there. We always seem to throw that out. In reality, this team is just really fucking bad. To the point where not even a solid year from Will McDonald IV with him in 15 games, putting together 8 sacks and 30 total tackles, along with 19 quarterback hits. That's a solid year. It was a little bit of a decline from his 10.5 the year before, but that's still good enough. And yet, nobody else could capitalize on that whatsoever. The defense as a whole was just atrocious. The roster construction around all of that is just clearly not good enough for them to have kept pace with most of the other teams that they faced off against this season. And we saw it culminate in a fucking 32-point loss to the damn Patriots. It's tough to see him get shut down for the year, but even with what he was doing individually, it just wasn't helping the team as a whole. It wasn't saving them from the shithole that they put themselves in. So you just gotta do something at that point, I suppose. Tylan Wallace would be out via the coach's decision. Wallace, though, from what I believe, honestly, Tylan Wallace hasn't played in some weeks for the Ravens. So I guess that can't really come as a surprise. But at the same time, given the lack of contributions in certain spots for certain wide receivers that they've had over the past few weeks, honestly, why not give the former Boletnikoff Award winner a fucking shot? At least, that's neither here nor there. Jevon Holland would be questionable to return to the game against the Raiders with a knee injury, and I think he did continue playing in that game no matter what. Again, the Raiders just got absolutely romped in a way they wanted to be. No change in roster construction there was going to really offset any of that. But it's tough. You would hope that Jevon Holland is better at this point. For sure. Luther Burden III, per Adam Schefter, was dealing with a quad injury after the game against the Bears. And even then, it was crazy to see in real time because you have the aftermath of the nearly completed but failed touchdown attempt to Jade Walker in the end zone. And as they're still just mulling over that, you have Luther Burden III laid out at a different area of the end zone as well. And he was struggling to get up. So they had, different medical members and staffers come over to him, check him out, see what was going on. And I think he had to be helped off of the field ultimately. He wasn't able to walk off on his own accord. And ultimately, a couple days ago, they figured out that this was the case. It's definitely a tough outcome considering the night that he had within the course of the game. But I suppose they are a part of the game. And so hopefully, with that potential ascent in mind and the fact that they are this close to getting into the playoffs, you hope that he can get better in an efficient manner and truly reach a 100% status before taking the field again with the team. Kind of like this next player, as they would essentially say, per multiple NFL insiders, that Tank Dell is looking to return in 2026 and is making good progress to doing so. Considering the fact that the man literally had a clean break in his lower leg at that point, off of essentially friendly fire with Jared Wayne, one of their receivers at the time. I don't think he's still with the team anymore. But considering how severe that was at the time, how unprecedented it might have been to see that go down and then have a person return the football when in reality, you are honestly just trying to make sure you can walk again in the first place. So you have to respect where Tank Dell is coming from there. I would hope that he can get back on the team. It's probably going to come at the expense of some of the other guys that they've gotten. I mean, the fact that they drafted 2 different Iowa State wide receivers in the same draft, in Higgins and Knoll, like, that adds a lot of depth for them. But, they are probably going to see their snaps get rotated around, because Tank Dell has legitimately been a good contributor for this Texans squad. You can't just have him return and then, barely utilize him. Like, he's going to get snaps again. I would expect it to kind of rotate in that sense. They have Hockenson as well in the same scenario, but he's kind of a tertiary option anyways. So, I don't know. As long as you find a way to distribute the ball, it's so difficult when you have that many quality wide receivers. I guess the jury would still be out on all of the Iowa State men. But hey, Nico Collins and Tank Dell may very well next season be able to get right back to where they left off as a wide receiver duo. And that would be interesting. It was mentioned by Andy Reid himself that he was more than likely to return next season. He kind of joked about the idea of potentially retiring, and I think they took that literally. I got something through my Fox Sports feed talking about Andy Reid talks retirement. No, he doesn't. He's literally saying, I guess the joke was that if they'll have me back, I'll coach for this upcoming season. Essentially like that. That was definitely a joke. So I don't know why that was taken so literally, word for word, in that situation. But that's okay, I suppose. The Cowboys would waive Trevon Diggs yesterday, and a lot of interesting stuff is coming out about this. One thing that I saw is that apparently there was a dispute about Trevon Diggs wanting to spend Christmas time with family, and I saw something else about a potential travel dispute with Brian Schottenheimer as the trip was being made, being one of the reasons that led to him being fired, released at that point of time. I can't definitively speak to either of those things. I genuinely have to look more into the situation, because the thought of that happening in and of itself just took me by surprise. Like, regardless of, either of those things, that's still one of the better cornerbacks you have on your team, and he's just gone like that. While DaRon Bland, mind you, is actively on IR as we speak. So, you are definitely depleted at that front at the moment. But, again, are either one of those things, when I do look into this, are they that strong enough to suggest and warrant a release of Trevon Diggs in that situation? Like, there's got to be a little more to the story there. So I'm going to figure that out in time on my own volition. But just looking at the entire thing, it's like, wow. Yes, the defense as a whole has been terrible this season. There's no secret about that. And They trusted Matt Eberflus to actually be a good defensive coordinator and do his job. He came so far from doing that. Understandable. You could argue that a large reason for that is, one, the lack of a pass rush, with you instantly trading away in the offseason a generational talent in Micah Parsons and sending him to the damn Packers, by and large affecting how your cover corners were going to be able to do their jobs throughout the season. Because it's a mutual thing. Good coverage can make a pass rush look good, but a great pass rush can also bail a weaker coverage unit out of some pretty risque situations. And they were not able to find that mesh this season. And Trevon Diggs over the past couple of years has been affected by that in a way. Even when Micah Parsons was there, one can say that since the season where he was just ball hawking everything, logging all the picks, he's taken a few steps back. And some of the same things with him have been true to this point. Like, he has, at times, gotten caught just completely out of position by trying to focus more on logging interceptions than actually covering the man in front of him when the ball is thrown his way. That is a fair criticism of his game. It is not something that's going to easily leave him, as he now is essentially in his prime as an athlete. But still, like, he contributed to your team in that way for that long and has still been able to, be somewhat of a threat on the opposing side as a cornerback. That's still a guy that you should, in a way, want to keep on your team. And in a way, that's probably where they were going. But, if this dispute is actually something, that got into the mind frame mutually to where they decided to just split, or also pairing in the fact that he has missed a substantial amount of time over the last 3 seasons since signing that 5-year, $97 million contract in 2023, with him missing pretty much 15 games in 2023 and then having a huge stretch of games missed this year after just something completely weird, with him literally being concussed from trying to set up a TV in his own house. Injuries at the end of the day kind of make you, as a person in the front office, question your investment in a player. Like, even those things, when it comes to, like, minimal regression, could be looked over if a player is always available and is still seen as a good enough product on their squad to last. But maybe the overarching theme is that the Cowboys just didn't see him that way anymore, as a little overpaid for his deal while actively taking steps back on a year-to-year basis and not being as good as they thought he was to justify the means. And with all that going down, they decided to cut their losses. It's unfortunate to see that for Trevon Diggs. And, there are genuinely cases where it's like, okay, in terms of coverage, I don't know if that can be easily solved. Again, right smack dab in the middle of his prime. He'll be, 28 next season, essentially. So, I guess a team would have to gauge whether or not they are willing to at least make him one of their core pieces. I would expect a team who is, kind of struggling to land cornerback talent through the draft, through agency, to probably give him a call and see what they can get out of him. I guess, again, do you trust him? Do you view him as a number 1 cornerback? That's what these teams are going to have to ask themselves. Any team as well who is in form to contend could potentially pick them up as well. They just threw that out there saying that, hey, if Trevon Diggs, doesn't, get picked up through the waiver wire, he'll be a free agent. And there have been situations as well where teams will get players out of free agency just before the postseason, which I didn't always know was allowed. But you can do it. So who knows? Maybe a team trying to make a late push in the playoffs right now could do it. And while I can't attest to, everybody or every single team that I would believe could go after him right now, I just wouldn't want to play the prediction game there. But I can say, sneakily enough, whether they do it, on the path to a playoff push or in the offseason, I could see the Bills taking a shot at Trevon Diggs. I could see the Bills taking a shot at him. They would need it. Yes, Christian Benford is a great cover corner. But everything else outside of that, since Rasul Douglas left, you could say, has been up in the air a little bit. They tried to give Kyra Elam a shot. We know how that fucking went. They have Tre'Davious White just flip-flopping in between, having his own struggles with injury now. But even when he's been there, it's like in his return to the team, it hasn't gone the smoothest. And I guess the Bills in that situation would have to consider that, Trevon Diggs is dealing with the same thing when it comes to the injury bug potentially. It's a huge risk to take, but he would be an undeniable upgrade over a lot of the other corners that they have on their team right now. And with some of the other general D-backs, between Cole Bishop having an emergency season and, I guess, a re-signed Jordan Poyer now, they should be trying to look for as much reinforcements as they can. It's something they've been doing over the past few years. I mean, you get Von Miller on that humongous deal and then proceed to get Joey Bosa in this offseason. Those aren't for no reason whatsoever. So, Trevon Diggs, although you would have to consider potentially giving him a new deal, you may be able to treat him, at least initially, like Tre'Davious White in this situation. See what he's worth. Give him a prove-it deal. Allow him to show you what he's capable of. And then, if you want to, retain him, retain him. If you need to find the right kind of draft capital to go out there and draft a corner, go do it. It does help as well that Maxwell Hairston, he has also gotten snaps at times as the second cornerback on the roster, but he'd been dealing with injuries to start off his career as well. And he does show flashes, but there are a lot of things with him that also have to be worked out with time. No, I wouldn't say that Trevon Diggs would be a full-on mentor. And given some of the reckless nature that he carries himself around with on the football field, you probably don't want to be learning all your lessons from him, but it would help to have that presence on the field to at least, take some form of influence from. For Hairston to take that next step forward as a player in the league. So, again, I wouldn't predict it all, but I would look out for the Bills there. Whether they do it in the postseason or whether they do it, towards the start of the new league year and the height of the offseason. He wouldn't be the only Diggs in a situation. As yesterday, it was detailed by Adam Schefter and a lot of other sources that Stefon Diggs is facing felony strangulation and assault charges after allegedly committing that on a woman. And I'm like, what the fuck? what the fuck is going on? Truly, that is a situation as well that I do need to do some more digging into before I even think about, saying much of anything. That's just a smart thing to do. I'm genuinely not aware of all the details of the matter. All I can say is that it's just like, what in the hell? And, it could potentially have implications on what happens, moving forward. I mean, several, reporters have thrown out the potential for him being suspended or not by the NFL over the next couple of games or so, or maybe missing some time to handle this case. And there was a different report than I initially saw about it on Fox, essentially stating that he had his lawyer appear in a court on his behalf to pronounce his innocence in the situation. So it could be a very weird look into it, but I would much rather feel an understanding of it at that point through all the wackiness rather than try to weed it out right now and ramble on about that of which I know nothing of right now at this point. The Packers would sign Desmond Ridder to their practice squad. I don't know what they think that's going to do for them. Yes, if you have to get into a situation where Malik Willis and Jourdan Love are both out and rely on Clayton Tune, yes, there's a problem with that, 100%. So I don't blame you. But at the same time, your response is Desmond Ridder. Your response is Desmond Ridder. Hey, okay. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys in the new year after a fairly successful year on the channel. Peace.